If there is one thing in Congress that has bipartisan support, it is military spending. Democrats and Republicans worked together this year to write the annual defense bill called the National Defense Authorization Act, and it sailed out of committee. But on the House floor, some conservative Republicans are against it, and they are suspending reality.
If we're going to spend more money on our Department of Defense, on our NDAA, why don't we pay military recruits more money instead of paying for electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging stations? That is an embarrassment, and I think it's an insult to the American people.
Madam Chair and Ranking Member Smith, I have good news in that the NDAA does include a raise for our service members, which is long overdue, but we can multitask.
We can multitask. That was Democrat Jennifer McClellan of Virginia correcting Greene and noting that the defense bill does include a raise for service members and recruits. Still, Marjorie Taylor Greene remains against the defense spending bill, and on Greene's concern, as you heard, about funding electric-powered vehicles, Greene continues to make that a centerpiece of her opposition.
Examples of the electric vehicle funding in this bill text are Joint Base Andrews, microgrid with electric vehicle charging infrastructure for $17.92 million. Joint Base Andrews is only 10 miles outside of Washington, D.C., in Maryland. This is the very base that if there was an attack on our nation's capital, Joint Base Andrews would be responding. Are we going to have to sit around and wait for our military members at Joint Base Andrews to charge their electric vehicles to come into the nation's capital to defend us in case of an attack?
Are we going to have to wait for military members at Joint Base Andrews to charge their vehicles to defend Washington, D.C. against an attack? The answer is no. Congresswoman, the military has this thing called readiness. That means that soldiers wear their uniforms on base, weapons can be loaded in seconds, and vehicles are kept fueled. The military doesn't allow active-duty, gasoline-powered military vehicles to sit around empty, so the concern about electric charging is absurd. On the House floor, an exasperated Adam Smith, ranking Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, responded to Greene with this.
And the lengths to which people opposed to these basic facts will go never ceases to amaze me, like the argument that, oh my gosh, we can't have electric vehicles come to our aid because they'll be sitting there uncharged. Let me assure you that as basic readiness, they will be charged in the same way that the gas tanks are currently full. Okay? It is not impossible to have electric vehicles work and function for us. They're doing it all over the world. Please reject this amendment and understand the need to get us to a more sustainable energy future.
On top of Marjorie Taylor Greene's amendment to block funding for electric vehicles, there are other culture war amendments as well that conservatives are trying to attach to the defense bill. Right-wing House members are trying to strip out funding for service members who have to travel to get an abortion. Another amendment would prohibit the Pentagon from spending on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. There was also an amendment to stop the military health care plan from covering gender-affirming surgeries. Without these amendments, the defense bill passed out of committee 57-1. Democrat Jim McGovern, ranking member of the House Rules Committee, is calling the MAGA right-wing amendments on the floor crappy poison pills that just waste time. He notes the Senate and White House will never go for what the right-wingers are proposing. Relatedly, if any of the amendments do pass the House floor, Democrats will abandon the overall bipartisan legislation. In other words, the defense bill, something that should be an example of bipartisan governance, and usually is, has become complicated thanks to right-wingers who are more interested in fighting culture wars than in helping the Department of Defense modernize U.S. forces and prepare the military for actual fighting. Amazing. By the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene recently got snubbed and humiliated by Donald Trump.
According to NBC News exclusive reporting, the controversial Georgia Congresswoman is setting her sights on just that, a presidential ticket, hoping to team up with former President Donald Trump as his VP in 2024.
Former Trump aide Steve Bannon, who spoke to Greene, told NBC News she sees herself on the short list for Trump's VP. And yet Greene has reportedly fallen short of the short list. Check out that video at the link below. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.